Hello, my beautiful and magical beings. This is Maya Joy Kana, and today I would like to speak about having your sun in the 8th house of your natal chart. I feel like I have been waiting my entire life to make this video, and I have so much to say on this topic that I think it's reasonable to expect that this may be the first of many videos about the sun in the 8th house. Now, before we jump into the meaning of this very mystical and magical placement, I would like to make an astrological recommendation. When calculating the placement of your sun in your natal chart, I recommend using the whole sign house system, which is the 4,000-year-old tried and true astrological tradition for reading the natal chart. So this would mean that your sun, in order for this to resonate, your sun would need to fall in the 8th sign from your ascendant. So blah, 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 blah. Let's talk about sun in the 8th house. Oh my gosh, you guys. Whew. This is such an epic placement. When you have your sun in the 8th house, one thing that you can expect to experience in your life is a continual process of rebirth. Sun in the 8th house, people may be born believing that they are someone very particular, and then throughout their life they will go through these tremendous initiations, often in the form of some type of, trauma or an experience that in order to live through it, you have to change. Like, there are these profound, deep psychological initiations that sun in the 8th house people experience, and they become changed. The 8th house in many ways is the house of death and rebirth, and people with their sun in the 8th house, any planet in the 8th house will undergo a transformative process. When it's your sun, it fundamentally is your sense of self, your ego that undergoes this process. I myself have my sun in the 8th house, and I actually, at age 26, I was so profoundly changed by an experience where I actually had more or less a near-death experience. I was in a coma for 8 days. Emerging from the experience, although I was still technically me, I really wasn't the same anymore. I had been fundamentally changed. And so I actually changed my name from Jessica to Maya. And I, honest to God, feel like an entirely different person. This is really common for people who have their sun in the 8th house. If you're not profoundly changed by the experience of living life and the initiations that are presented, then I would almost wonder if you really have your sun in the 8th house. I feel like sun in the 8th house people were like part of some intense club. And when you have the sun in the 8th house, like where your sun shines in your chart, it's where the area of life that you're shining light on. And the 8th house is just, it's the house of secrets. And so there's this strange feeling when you have your sun in the 8th house, because it's like, even if you don't mean to, it's almost like your mere existence shines light on that which is hidden all around you. It's like the things that normally people want to push below the surface, somehow your presence brings those things out. Now, this could manifest in different ways for different people. For me, I always felt this sense that I knew the truth in other people. I was, for example, now I have more than the sun, and I have a Venus, Mercury, Sun conjunction in the 8th house. So maybe it's part of that. But growing up, I would notice that the truth would kind of come out when I walked around. For example, if someone was having an affair of some type or something like that, it was like somehow what I would say or my sheer presence would shine light on those things the sun in the 8th house person, sometimes the way that you are shining light on 8th house matters is that somehow people see something in you. Somehow people might see you as like their psychologist, for example. That'd be common. Somebody who has their sun in the 8th house would make a natural psychologist. And so sometimes the way that things come out is people literally, they literally confess them to you. Like they literally tell you their deepest, darkest secrets. And I think, one mission of a person who has their sun in the 8th house is to actually make that okay. It's like your very existence says these parts of yourself that you feel like you have to stuff down and hide from the world. I see these things and they're okay. It's like we live and exist to walk side by side with these shadow elements of life. They're somehow like drawn to us, or we're drawn to them, or magnetized to them. And it can be a harrowing life experience to have your sun in the 8th house. And yet there's also side by side with that, there's like this unspoken knowingness that you have within you some special power. That might sound a little strange, but it's true. And you may not know where the power comes from, but it comes from your soul. The 8th house is so often affiliated, with occult matters and abilities. And I think most people who have their sun in the 8th house are going to have some of those abilities. And so what often is the unseen world of the subconscious or world of spirit, you can often find yourself there. And for me, like growing up with my sun in the 8th house, I grew up in a haunted house. And it was like, I walked in reality, but I was also in touch with another reality that a lot of other people didn't see or experience. And that was the reality of the dead. Somehow, if you have your sun in the 8th house, it's like you are shining the light on death. You are shining the light on death and the occult in some way, somehow, before your life is over. And it's like you will know death. You will come to know death and face death, both your own and other people's. And sometimes I think that could occur where someone with their sun in the 8th house has someone close to them die when they're really young, and they're like that little kid and they're standing there like in front of the coffin or things like that, and they're finding themselves through that experience. I can remember being a toddler, hardly knowing how to talk, and already asking my mom, what if you die? It's like these themes of death are so close to us all the way through our life. Now, growing up for me, I didn't, and I'd be curious if you want to share your experience in the comments, like as somebody with your sun in the 8th house, what does death mean to you, or how has death shaped your life? I didn't really have anybody really close to me die until really like last year when I was 30 years old, but I saw dead people every day of my childhood. And just because you have your sun in the 8th house and you're here to shine your light on the darkness doesn't mean that you're not afraid. Like, I just want to say that because I found myself like having to deal with a lot of 8th house matters all throughout my life, but I was still afraid. The dead people were sitting there on my bed and I was shaking in terror. But somehow through that terror, I became who I am today. And now I'm in this position where, God bless, like I am in my 6th year, working full time as a psychic, and now a little bit as an astrologer. And I think how these profound 8th house experiences have brought me to this place. And I think if you have in your sun in the 8th house, it's like you fundamentally have to come to terms with the darkness and those aspects of society and life that are hidden, and to like shake hands with your greatest fears and make peace with those things, because those are the things that are going to make you who you really are. Because the 8th house can be, among other things, the house of secrets. I think often people, I know certainly it's the case for me, but people who have their sun in the 8th house maybe are hidden in some way. Or although people may come to you and confess their secrets to you, maybe you don't confess your secrets to others. Like, there's a certain sense here. There's a certain intrigue. There's a certain quality, like, in the eyes of someone who has their sun in the 8th house, where it's like, you just know. You just look at that person and you just know, like, they have been through some things, and you just know there is so much depth in that person. There is so much more than what you see on the surface. I've recently been reflecting on my 8th house sun and stellium and realizing that, you know, in some ways, like, I think I'm a book of secrets. There's no one in my life who truly knows me. That's the honest truth. There's no one in my life to whom I've revealed, you know, all of my being. And I think for somebody who has their sun in the 8th house, certainly to come together with that person who really does know all of you is sort of like on the list of to-dos, you know, for this lifetime, depending on other factors in your chart. But I would certainly say it's part of the destiny. But it's not, depending on the, you know, aspects to the sun, but it's often not something that you're going to give away easily, because you yourself, you become the 8th house. So you become that, like, mystical being, that secret, that which is hidden. You become that in a way. I think having this placement makes you really, really strong. I would definitely say there's that feeling of you. It's like you fundamentally have to come to terms with death, but in doing so, hopefully, if all goes well, you lose the fear of death. And from that place, you can then start to seek out those experiences that so many other people might actually fear, and seek out that transformation. And, you know, now for me, after dying once in my life, I'm really not afraid to die again. I've accepted the possibility that at any moment, you know, something could happen to me. I could die. I could come back again. And, you know, I could go from being Maya to being Susanna or somebody else, because Maya's not really who I am. And, you know, the name we put on ourselves aren't really who we are. People with their sun in the 8th house know that you are your soul, and you will continue to live on from lifetime to lifetime. You, the you that you truly are, you cannot be destroyed. You will keep on keeping on, and you will be you, whether you could be a man now and you'll still be you if you're born again and you're a woman or you're anything, you know, because you are fundamentally you, but you are that which lies below the surface. You're not a sun in the 2nd house. You're not, I'm what I own. I'm this body, you know, and I'm this whatever. You're a sun in the 8th house. You know, you are that you that is deep, 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 deep inside of you. If you have your sun in the 8th house, I do recommend that you lose your fear of death. A great way to do that, I think, this is just my personal preference, but, you know, I feel like I came alive in a new way after reading the book by Michael Newton called Journey of Souls, which is many accounts of people's life after life. And that's when I really started to, like, step into my sun in the 8th house and really started to get in touch with that power that comes from deep within me. And I feel like being in touch with that power and that part of yourself that will survive death and that will survive anything that you experience, any of these profound transformative experiences in your life, that's where you can really come of age. Like, come of age, come into your power of the sun in the 8th house. Don't be afraid to shine your light on 8th house matters. You're here for that. And that can be an uncomfortable thing sometimes, to bring light to these things that are often hidden. And yet, with your sun in the 8th house, that really is your destiny. So all of you out there who have your sun in the 8th house, who are part of this special sun in the 8th house club, my heart goes out to you. And I'm just setting the intention for all of us to achieve our 8th house destinies and to really feel the power that lies within us to be able to embrace our mystical gifts and abilities. And like I said, this is just the tip of the iceberg of what I want to say about the sun in the 8th house. So if you liked this video, then subscribe and come back soon for more 8th house content. Until then, sun in the 8th house, happy transformation. That which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and namaste.